According to Elon Musk, Tesla is losing insane amounts of money at their Gigafactory, Texas. And also, China wants to destroy the Starlink satellite system. Let's take a look. And for those of you interested in investing, check out WeBull, an amazing platform for buying and selling stocks, and now cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin, Dogecoin, and others. Open an account and get a free stock valued at up to $200, and fund your account and get another free stock valued at up to $1,600. Check out the link in the description and help the channel at the same time. Hey y'all, it's Dr. Know-It-All. So I want to spend most of the episode today talking about a New York Post article about how Chinese scientists are saying that they should have the capability to kill the entire Starlink satellite network. But first, I want to talk about a little clip from the third installment of the Tesla Owners of Silicon Valley interview with Elon Musk, which I'm still digesting. There's a whole bunch of stuff about AI and full self-driving in there that I'm going to do another episode on probably tomorrow. But anyway, I wanted to touch on a really brief thing, which was when Elon Musk said that the Gigafactory, Texas is losing insane amounts of money. And then he paused for a really long time and looked at the factory and he was like, yeah, 4680 ramp up was harder than we expected it to be. So as a surprise to really nobody who's been paying attention, this did not surprise me whatsoever that they are having issues with ramping 4680 production. Getting a new battery technology from the lab to insane amounts of production is a really difficult task. And so it's not surprising at all that 4680 battery cells are not being produced at the rate that I guess Elon, being an optimist, thought that they were going to be produced at. So what I've heard, the latest information that I heard is that they had about 1 million cells from Fremont when they started the factory, and they're creating somewhere around 1 million 4680 battery cells per month right now. And you might be like, wow, that's fantastic. But what you have to realize is that they're on the order of somewhere around 1,000 cells per car. So when you have 1 million cells, that's only 1,000 cars. Now, they may have reduced that down to 500 or 600. So let's be generous and say 2,000 cars. But then what you do is you look at something like Giga Shanghai or Fremont or whatever, and they are making on the order of 15 to 20,000 vehicles per month. So Giga Austin is at least an order of magnitude, like 10 times less production capability than these other factories are. So obviously these are all sort of general numbers, but you can't make money on your most expensive, largest factory if you're producing around 1/10 of the vehicles that your other factories are producing. So the other piece of this news that's been in the rumor mill lately is that Tesla's setting up a secondary production line using 2170 non-structural battery packs in Giga, Texas. And that, in my mind, is a good idea because there's a lot more access to 2170 battery cells. And until they get 4680 cells ramped up, they might as well be producing Model Ys in any way, shape, or form they can to meet the demand that they have. So if you don't know, it's not as easy as a drop-in solution. You can't just pull the 4680s out and put 2170s in, because the center of the Model Y with the 4680s is what's called a structural battery pack, which basically means that the entire structure of the middle of the car is based on those batteries. So they have to do a completely separate, construction of that middle part. I don't know if they have known stable interfaces between the two sides because they're using Giga presses to create the front and the back. So that part's relatively easy, but the kind of merger of the two together may be more complicated than I think. So they may have to retool the Giga presses. Hopefully they've designed it cleverly enough that they don't have to do that. But anyway, it's more than just a drop-in solution. So it's going to be a significant undertaking to ramp that up. And I'm sure Elon and Tesla are not happy about that. But at the same time, you can't be producing 1,000 cars a week in this gigantic factory. You need to be doing, 5 to 10 to 15 and eventually more like 20 or 25,000 cars per week. So it's a good idea in the long term. Basically I saw this coming a long time ago, and probably they should have too, but there's probably a level of optimism in there. Eventually this is going to get solved. It's a relatively short-term hiccup, but it could go on for 6 months, a year, 18 months or something. So it is going to materially impact Tesla's ability to produce cars at Austin, and it's also going to put a really big drag on their margins because, this is completely made up numbers, but let's say that Tesla was getting 50% margins on all their other cars that they were producing, but the ones that they're producing in Texas, because it's so expensive to run and they're producing so few, is like negative 10%. Well, that's gonna drag your margins significantly down below 50%. So again, made up numbers and just throwing out numbers. They have nothing to do with reality because I have no idea what the real numbers are. But basically having it really, really low to negative margins in one factory's vehicles is going to cause your margins for all of your vehicles to drag down significantly. So, there's the combination of the ramp up at Berlin and Austin, and the fact that Austin is not producing anything like the number of cars that they need to. It also makes me realize that the 2170 Model Ys that they're producing in Berlin was a really good idea, because they realized that they were not going to be able to produce enough 4680s even for Austin, much less Austin and Berlin. So again, over the next couple of years, this is all going to shake out and it's going to be fine. But in the short term, it's a significant problem, and it could impact production of the Cybertruck, because I'm pretty convinced that the Cybertruck will not be able to use 2170s. It won't be something where they can do that. They're going to have to use 4680s. And if they don't get those things ramped up enough, that's going to preclude them being able to construct the Cybertrucks as well, and potentially also the Tesla semis. So there's a lot of knock-on effects if they don't get these 4680s ramped up to really, really high-speed production. All right, so on from temporary glitches and issues to more like existential threats to SpaceX and Starlink itself. I'm taking this information from a New York Post article, which I'll link in the description, which then references a Chinese research paper. And you can see it all in the title. China analyst urges possible attacks on Elon Musk's Starlink satellites. So the New York Post has a tendency to be a little over the top with their headlines, but actually in this case, it's really not that over the top, at least according to what I understand. I can't read the original Chinese, so obviously I'm depending a lot on translations, but it does seem like this is a pretty existential potential threat to Starlink. And again, it could have a knock-on effect with Tesla, since Elon Musk is the largest shareholder for both of these entities, and so therefore they're related in many people's minds. And remember that Tesla has a gigantic factory in Shanghai, so they don't want to piss off the Chinese government too much with their SpaceX/Starlink stuff, because it could easily have an effect on Tesla as well. So let's go ahead and read the article and figure out what is going on here. A Chinese military analyst suggested that Beijing should develop countermeasures for the Starlink satellite system developed by Elon Musk's SpaceX, including ways to hack or even destroy the service during a time of conflict. In a recent paper published in a China-based academic journal called Modern Defense Technology, analyst Ren Yuanzhen argued that China's military needs to develop the capability of tracking each of the thousands of satellites set to comprise the Starlink constellation in the coming years. Ren's paper noted that Starlink could be a key resource for the US military, both as a means of providing internet connectivity for troops and as a source of intelligence through satellite imagery. So I'm going to stop right there, because there's a factual error in this. Starlink satellites, unless they have some incredible stealth stuff going on, do not have cameras. They exist to receive and transmit radio signals. That's pretty much what they do, and they will eventually have lasers. I don't think Starlink 2 is up there yet, but anyway, they'll have laser communication directly between the satellites in orbit. But those lasers are not at all weapons-grade lasers. They're communication lasers. They're very low power. So basically, there's no offensive capability involved, and there's no intelligence gathering capability, because these things don't have cameras, so they can't really gather intelligence. So anyway, Ren's statement is just factually incorrect, at least right now. Who knows in the future? I guess Starlink hypothetically could have cameras on it, but that's not really what it's designed for. The analyst added that the Chinese military should explore a combination of soft and hard kill methods that would make some Starlink satellites lose their functions and destroy the constellation's operating system, according to portions of the paper cited by Bloomberg. Bloomberg noted it's unclear if his views constitute the official stance of the Chinese Communist Party, which has drawn sharp criticism from the US and its allies over its military aggression toward Taiwan and in the South China Sea. Ren is affiliated with the Beijing Institute of Tracking and Telecommunications Technology. The Post has reached out to SpaceX for comment. Obviously, they have received none. Musk has touted SpaceX's Starlink initiative as a source of high-speed, low-cost broadband internet for rural areas and other regions that have traditionally lacked reliable internet access. Amazon is in the process of developing a similar satellite network under the name Project Kuiper. While SpaceX is a civilian firm, Starlink has drawn international recognition in recent weeks for the vital role it has played in supporting Ukraine's efforts to resist a brutal Russian invasion. Musk has provided thousands of Starlink terminals to Ukraine since the conflict began in late February. A U.S. general recently declared that Starlink had, quote, totally destroyed Vladimir Putin's information campaign, end quote, by allowing Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky to directly communicate with his people despite the Kremlin's efforts to disrupt networks. Ukraine's military has also reportedly used Starlink to coordinate military action, such as facilitating drone strikes against Russian tanks in the field. And that, folks, is the crux of the issue. This really all has to do with Russia, Ukraine, the war, and how SpaceX's Starlink satellites have disrupted Russia's plans for invasion. For a country that's, let's say, not into free speech, like China is, that's about as delicately as I can put that. For a country that's like that, to confront the possibility that anybody with a Starlink receiver can access information from anywhere around the globe has got to keep these people up at night. Of course, purchasing Starlink receivers in China is completely illegal, and as far as I understand it, Starlink, of course, is not allowed to operate in China, but it's going to be rather difficult should people get clever about this and underground purchase these things, or hell, even reverse engineer it and build it themselves, and then access the satellite terminals and things. So there's a lot of ifs that have to happen first, but if those things take place, that does mean that people in China could directly access information from the rest of the world, and if you don't know, that is not currently the case. And of course, I'm very much in the camp of information wants to be free. If you're trying to control information, you're going to lose eventually. It's very, very difficult to control information. It has an entropic tendency to just spread out all over the place. So anyway, I think that it's kind of a losing battle for China to try to stop this, but that's their own thing. Much more importantly, and this is where SpaceX's decisions really come in, and I'm fully in support of Starlink being put in the Ukraine and disrupting the Russian invasion. I want to be clear about that. But there is a pretty significant effect of that decision. That decision was basically saying we're going to go from a non-political, non-governmental organization, sort of broadband thing for the people of the world to suddenly taking sides. They're taking sides in this conflict, and they're donating, they're giving a lot of these satellite receivers, and they actually set up communications in Ukraine on very short order. Basically, I don't believe they were operating at all in the Ukraine before the war, and so they set all that stuff up in motion and made it happen very, very rapidly. So all of this is to the good, for the public good overall, but it does suddenly make Starlink into a military type of communications device rather than what the original goal of it was. So that's putting SpaceX and Starlink and even Tesla, because of their China operations, in some form of danger. So I, of course, don't know what the future holds, but this does seem like kind of an existential threat to SpaceX's continued development, and also to Starlink's continued development, and also even to Tesla's continued development in China. So I wish I had a simple answer to this, but I really don't. We're just going to have to sit tight and see what the future holds. But the die, in a way, was cast when SpaceX and Starlink decided to take sides in the Ukraine invasion. Again, I'm all for that taking sides, but there are consequences, and one of those consequences that, again, was relatively obvious if you were thinking about all of this stuff, was that China was not going to be pleased about this, because they are very much in the camp of containing information and not allowing it to be free. So 4680 cells in Austin, Texas, relatively short-term, 12-month, 18-month sort of glitch and ramp up issues and things like that. Not a big deal long term, but it is going to be a big deal in the next few months. And I predict Q2 margins are going to be significantly lower between the Shanghai lockdown and the fact that Austin, Texas and Berlin are creating a drag on profit margins. So that's just my prediction, not a financial analyst. But anyway, that's what I'm predicting for Q2 results. But much more importantly, long term, is this sort of negative stance that China is taking on Starlink and how that could affect SpaceX and also Tesla. And heck, I mean, if they go with hard kill stuff like actually destroying these satellites, it could create a Kessler Syndrome where that entire orbital envelope is completely trashed and there's no way to put satellites up in there anymore. So that would be, wow, just disastrous beyond anything, even beyond SpaceX or any individual country. That would be incredibly disastrous for the entire world. So let's hope it doesn't come to that. But this is something to keep a very, very close eye on in the future. All right, I hope you enjoyed this episode and found it fun and thought-provoking and maybe a little bit depressing as well. If you did, please do like the episode so other people can find it, and also consider subscribing for more of this kind of content. As always, a huge shout out to my patrons on Patreon. Thank you all so much. In fact, I'm going to be doing an interview with one of my Patreon patrons who happens to be a factory planning specialist. And we'll talk about how factory planning and robotics and things like that actually impact Tesla and SpaceX and other Elon Musk companies. So stay tuned for that for sure. And of course, if you want to join the team, just check out the link in the description. And if you're interested in a whole bunch of really cool merch, check out our merch store. Link is in the description. We have TeslaBot t-shirts, the Tesla meme t-shirt, Success is a Possible Outcome, 4680 battery cells. All of that stuff is on t-shirts, mugs, tumblers, and on. So check it out. And for those of you interested in investing, check out WeBull, an amazing platform for buying and selling stocks, and now cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin, Dogecoin, and others. Open an account and get a free stock valued at up to $200, and fund your account and get another free stock valued at up to $1,600. Check out the link in the description and help the channel at the same time. Thank you. And finally, don't forget we are both Tesla and Amazon affiliates. If you look in the description, you can see how going shopping for a solar roof, a power wall, or anything on Amazon helps out the channel. In the meantime, I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.